All right, everyone, continuing with the notes for Chapter 7, we're going to cover Section 2 of your notes in this particular video. Moving on to broadcasting sales practices. Radio sales are closely tied to demographic analysis and program planning. A station with fewer listeners might actually charge more per spot. Sounds interesting, sounds intriguing. How do they get away with it? Because the reach of that station has a particular demographic, and certain demographics are seen as more valuable to certain advertisers. Advertisers are willing to pay more if they know that the majority of their audience that's listening to a station fits within a certain type of person that would be more likely to be able to patronize their business, take up their product or service. So if you are targeting people in particular, you are going to try to match your message with a station that has the majority of the types of people that you're looking for. If you're selling luxury cars, for example, most people that buy luxury cars tend to listen to classical music stations, to news talk stations. So those affluent audiences are rather attractive to those particular types of advertisers, and they are willing to pay more to target their message to that particular audience. Same goes with fashion. Those that are really into fashion, wanting the latest on clothing, that tends to be a bigger hit with younger women in particular. So stations that reach out to a young female demographic would be attractive to those that are promoting clothing lines and other types of beauty products. So they might be willing to pay more for an adult contemporary station or a contemporary hit radio station or a rhythmic music station. The stations charge for the time that they give to advertisers may be day dependent and may also be time dependent. In other words, there's different rates for different day parts. Most stations are going to charge more to reach out to a morning drive audience than they are for a midday audience or an evening audience, because there's more people listening during the morning drive time, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., people getting up, turning on the radio as they're getting ready for work, commuting into town for their job. More people are listening, therefore that time is more valuable. And different stations, depending on the listening cycles of their audience, may have different rates for different times of the day, depending on how their listeners interact with the station. Station ad rates are pegged to the share of the audience that is listening to the station at a given time. Remember, share is the percentage of an audience in an area based on the number of people that actually use a particular medium. So the share of a radio station is going to be the percentage of the people in a market that listen to radio. If you have a higher share, you have a higher percentage of people listening to your station as opposed to other stations, you're most likely going to command higher rates for your advertising time. One sort of way that most radio stations will keep track of their billing cycles and the way that they charge their clients is by means of a special calendar. And that calendar is called a broadcast month. So instead of using the regular calendar months like we do, so January 1st to 31st is the month of January, and so on and so on, the broadcast month says the month actually begins perhaps in the previous month, but it's always going to end on the last Sunday of the calendar month. So if you've got a month where the last Sunday of the month is, say, the 27th, then the next month begins on the 28th, and that's the next broadcast month and continues on. And what that does is it gives a month in radio a full 4 weeks or a full 5 weeks, depending on how the days fall. And it makes for a much cleaner way to be able to do billing cycles for their clients, so that you're always billing them for 4 complete weeks or perhaps 5 complete weeks, instead of trying to figure out campaigns where a month may start on a Friday and end on a Tuesday or something like that. The rate card for the radio day is going to be broken down into day parts. And again, that has to do with the fact that there's different amounts of people that are listening to a station at different times. And depending on the station, you might even have different types of audiences that are listening at different times of the day. Think of a station that normally plays music during the week and then perhaps does religious services on Sunday. Or they have talk shows during the day and then they air sporting events in the evening. So you're going to have different audiences for those different times of day depending on the content that the station is airing, and that can also play in a factor what a station charges for its airtime during those particular day parts. When an advertiser buys a package that will run on a station throughout a broadcast day, the term run of schedule, or ROS, is used to designate that the spots are played during all of the day parts. So when an advertiser looks to buy airtime, they may decide that they only want to spend money on morning drive because that's where most of the listeners are. Or they may decide that they only want to spend money during middays or evenings because it's a cheaper rate for them to be able to advertise on. Run of schedule is kind of a middle of the road sort of approach, where you're going to get the opportunity to have your commercials airing at all different points throughout the broadcast day, but you're paying one rate to be able to have that privilege. And generally it's going to be a volume schedule where you're airing multiple ads during the course of that flight. Remember, flight dates, start and end dates. And you have multiple commercials running there, so you're getting the pick of various different day parts, and you're also getting a better rate overall for all those different time slots. Radio stations also use what's called cooperative advertising, or co-op. This is an arrangement in which a national firm will share the cost of advertising with a local business. One of the great examples of this would be if a local car dealership were to buy advertising. So they are promoting that they're having a sale on the latest models that are coming out of the factory. Say, for example, John Heister Chevrolet in Lillington. They most likely are doing a co-op arrangement with General Motors, who makes Chevrolet cars. And what will happen is that as the ad is promoting what's going on in particular at John Heister Chevrolet, you're also going to hear certain things mentioned in the ad that General Motors has an interest in promoting. So there's going to be certain rules in terms of what's said in the ad that General Motors is going to put on the co-op. But in exchange for that, General Motors is going to pay a portion of the advertising bill for John Heister Chevrolet. And you hear this with a lot of other industries as well. Heating and air conditioning is a popular one that also takes advantage of co-op. The future of radio sales: nearly 75% of all radio sales are local as opposed to national and network sales. And that has a lot to do with the fact that most programming comes from local sources, whether it's a local talk show or music playlists that are generated by the local radio station. And the bread and butter for that sort of programming comes from the local businesses in the community in which the radio station serves. There are some national buys that happen on local stations. They tend to happen with the larger clusters, like a station that's owned by an iHeart or by an Entercom or a Beasley or something like that. But the local mom and pops, many of them, and even the larger guys in greater quantities nowadays too, are getting most of their advertising dollars from local businesses in the community. And because of the affordability of radio advertising versus television and versus other means, it's much more attractive for local businesses to advertise on radio as well. Now, some radio group owners have started consolidating with internet and on-air sales, that they'll do different packages that include an on-air advertising campaign plus integration with the station website or with a station app in one way or another to create added value for an advertising client and to create different sorts of tracking protocols as well, because it's much easier to track whether listeners are interested in an advertiser if they interact with an ad online. Now, public radio stations. Some public radio stations operate part-time. It's possible for the FCC to require a part-time non-commercial station to share its frequency with other non-commercial entities. This is really attractive for small community stations or for nonprofits that can't cover the entire broadcast day with programming. So it is possible that there could be kind of a joint operating agreement between various organizations on one frequency. So one organization would run the station for a certain part of the day while the other does another part of the day. National Public Radio, or NPR, uses underwriting to help defray the cost of programming instead of advertising. There's a main difference between underwriting and advertising. We'll talk about that in a second. NPR stations also receive money from its affiliated stations like WUNC here in Central North Carolina and from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or the CPB. Now, unlike commercial advertising, underwriting cannot make a call to action in its underwriting announcements. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean to make a call to action? Well, a couple of things that you cannot do in an underwriting announcement that you can do in a normal advertisement. Number one, you cannot make a superlative statement in an underwriting announcement. You can't talk about a company and say words like, we're the best, we're the cheapest, we are the exclusive place for this particular product or service. You're not allowed to do that. Underwriting announcements also cannot mention any costs or any pricing schemes in their announcements. You can't say that something's only $19.95, or you can't say everything's on sale, or we'll beat the competition with our prices and services and things like that. Not allowed to do that. You also cannot make a plea to listeners to respond to the business. You can't tell them that they need to call a phone number or visit a website or come by the showroom. Now, they can mention that a business is located at such and such a place, or that their website is this particular place, but you can't direct people to go to the website or to make the phone call. You can give it on an information basis, but you can't charge people with asking them to do a particular action. So underwriting announcements are different from advertisements in those three ways. They can't make superlative statements, they can't mention costs or pricing, and they can't ask you to respond to them in one way or another. Now, let's take a look at television. TV stations have a greater reliance on outside programming sources than their counterparts in radio do. A lot of radio stations tend to produce a lot of their content in-house, unless they're part of a satellite service where they get their programming content. TV stations, some of them will produce a limited amount of their own programming, but by and large, the programming is coming from sources outside of the television station. TV network programming is primarily based on shows of a fixed length that are meant to reach very large audiences. Vast majority of television programs are going to fit those chunks of 30 minutes, 60 minutes, very few 90-minute shows, but they do exist, sometimes a 2-hour event. But by and large, it's going to fit within those specific rates of time, and they're trying to reach as many people as possible with their programming content, especially in broadcast TV networks. During those times when the network is supplying programs, the local TV station is responsible for retransmission of the network programs for that market and for station breaks at designated times. So during network programming, when Channel 5 is carrying the NBC lineup, they are contracted with NBC to carry the NBC programming, but within the NBC programming, NBC allows for a certain amount of time each hour that the local affiliate can sell advertising time to local clients. Usually it's about 2 minutes an hour, but it can be different from station to station and network to network. Station breaks between network programs allow the local stations to sell advertisers adjacencies. These are those local station breaks. And these are spots that air next to network programming, so it is possible for a local company to be associated with a powerful network program. And the station is able to generate significant revenue from advertisers that are willing to pay the rates to be associated with network shows. The amount of money that a particular station or network can charge sponsors is influenced by several factors. Here's a couple of them. There's the number of people that are predicted to watch during a particular time period. So looking at projected ratings and shares numbers for a particular show, a particular night, a particular time slot. Also the number of commercials the advertiser wishes to place within the station or the network. If they're willing to buy more commercial avails, usually they're going to get a volume discount. As far as network sales goes, television viewing is heaviest during the fall and the spring, and that's generally when the newer episodes of network programming are going to be on the air. It's lightest during the summer rerun season, also during the December holidays, generally because a lot of people are not as home as much to sit and watch television. They're out and about, going out for the evening, spending time with family, friends, that sort of thing. So they're not at home watching TV. So when people are home during the fall, during the spring, that's when TV viewing is the heaviest. Most networks like to see upfront revenue. The upfront revenue sales period begins in late spring and ends in the summer before the new fall television season begins. And what this does is it gives networks an opportunity to go to prospective advertisers, talk about the new shows that are coming up, what they believe are going to be the audience reaches for those shows, and give advertisers an opportunity to lock in lower advertising rates by committing to advertise with the network for the upcoming season. So in a way, the advertisers are taking a bit of a risk because they may not have real numbers as how well these new shows in particular are going to do once they hit the airwaves. But they also get a rate advantage by locking in and committing to the network early on. Scatter buying is a strategy in which advertisers buy time in prime time, but also buy other slots during the broadcast day as commercial avails become available. So you can get a lower advertising rate if you buy slots within prime time within certain shows, but also agree to have your advertisements run during non-prime time hours, say like during daytime talk shows or during the nightly network news or something like that. The economics of networking. Today, television networks own or co-produce a great deal of their own programming. This is the vertical integration aspect that we talked about early on. As a result, they can develop new programming with the intention of profiting from the show when it is placed into the syndication market. In other words, when a show comes off network and is made available to TV stations across the country to air outside of network prime time. Also, they can make money when they syndicate and sell their show to international audiences outside the United States. TV programs are very expensive to produce. The per episode cost for a drama can be in the millions of dollars because you don't just pay the salaries of the actors, you're also paying for production crews, you're paying for sets, lot fees, and all that sort of thing. It's not unusual for networks to lose money the first season that a show airs because you're pouring a lot of money into the show when it's first beginning, because you have brand new actors, brand new production people, brand new sets, and that takes a lot of financial investment up front. To make network television profitable, networks charge a large amount of money for a 30-second spot during the most popular programs. There's a table in your textbook that kind of gives a little bit of insight as to how that would work. And yeah, you would need to have pretty deep pockets to be able to buy 30 seconds of advertising on one of the major networks and have your spot air across the country. Networks usually negotiate to broadcast a program at least twice. The rerun allows the network to recoup some of the losses from not taking in enough ad revenue during an episode's first run. Many times, television seasons will include anywhere up to 22 brand new episodes for that season, for that year. And that's why you do see networks kind of break up how they run those shows. They'll run a series of new episodes for a while, then take a break, run some reruns, especially as it gets closer to the holidays. Then they'll run the rest of the episodes that are in a new season, and then finish out the year with running reruns once again in the summer. Sports is becoming more and more expensive to purchase rights for broadcast. They don't have the luxury of airing repeat performances, except in 2020 where we're watching reruns of Super Bowls and things like that. But generally, sports is one of those things that people like to experience live, and they want to be in the moment watching that game. And because the professional networks and even the college networks have become very popular, they can command a lot of money for the broadcast rights to air the games. Syndications and local sales. Syndicated programming can come from two different places. It can be off-network syndications, what we've talked about earlier, when a show has run on one of the major networks and they've done their run on the network, and now the shows can be made available to local television stations. And also first-run syndications, which air directly on local TV stations. This means that they've never run on a network before, and these are shows that when you tune in to watch them on your local TV station, they are unique to the local TV outlet. This would cover a lot of your daytime talk shows, game shows like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, other shows that run in syndication, like things like TMZ, a lot of your judge shows, things like that, that have never aired on a network but air on local TV stations across the country. When a TV station licenses a syndicated show package, it obtains the exclusive rights to show each episode a certain number of times in the local market. So they will put together a deal package and a programming agreement that includes the rights to air certain seasons of programming for a number of runs for a set period of time. And there's going to be generally there's going to be a cost associated with that. That's an expense to the station that pays the syndicator. One other way to run shows is through barter. Barter programs may be provided to TV stations for little or no money, But if the station uses barter, it offers the program distributor a certain amount of its commercial time to sell within the program. So, take for example a 30-minute show. Now, a 30-minute show is generally going to have somewhere around 22 minutes of content and 8 minutes of commercials within the show. In a barter situation, the syndicator will likely keep 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 minutes worth of that commercial time for the syndicator to sell to regional and national advertisers to run within the program, while the local affiliate will be able to sell the rest of the airtime that's not kept by the syndicator. News and informational programs are extremely important local products for the station to sell. Time sold during and adjacent to highly rated local news programs often generates large percentages of the TV station's revenue. When you think about it, news is one of those types of programs that is locally produced by the station. They don't have to pay a syndicator for the rights to air the show. It's something they do in-house. News is also something that they can control how much commercial inventory will run within the newscast. So it can be a very lucrative revenue generator for local stations when they do newscasts. Most spot buying is handled by a local station's national representative who serves a station in working with national and regional buyers. Now, the national representative is not someone that works at the station itself. It is a person that is hired by a television station and works basically in his or her own company or at a separate company and provides various services to the different stations that he or she works for. Reps will offer programming advice and market research to help the station increase its viewership. And the goal here is for the station to be able to get better ratings, to get better revenues, and of course, better commissions for the rep in the process. Local TV sales. Stations employ salespeople called account executives to visit potential advertisers. And the cost of advertising is based on the show the client chooses to advertise in. Where radio tends to focus more on day parts, it's much more segmented in television, where the rates for advertising can vary greatly, not just by day part, but also from particular program to particular program. As far as cable TV goes, the cost per thousand for cable is lower than broadcast TV, and that's because cable is still very much a niche medium, and there are many cable channels. So in this case, you might get a smaller audience when you advertise on cable, but in the way that is true in radio, you're also reaching a particular demographic. So for some, cable is an attractive deal. Many different cable systems. Now we're talking about the local cable operators here, not the national cable channels. The different local cable systems have done what are called interconnects. They've interconnected, allowing cable ads to be sold over entire geographic regions, whether it's nationally, regionally, locally. You can even go as minuscule as advertising to just a portion of a local cable operator's service area. You can narrow it down by zip code as to where you want your advertising to run. Even sometimes, depending on how sophisticated a cable operator is, just portions of a zip code. As far as public TV goes, funding for a public station comes from a variety of sources, such as federal and state dollars, also underwriting announcements, as we talked about earlier with radio, and with viewer pledges as well. Underwriters may be sought on a national level or on a local station level, and many times underwriters will sponsor a particular program across all PBS stations. Sometimes underwriters will support a particular local station in and of itself. Special programming will air during membership drives, things like concerts, special speeches, seminars, things like that, in an attempt to be able to give its pitch to the viewers to support their local PBS station. That's going to do it for section 2 of your notes, so we'll take a break here. We'll conclude the chapter when we hop over to part C of chapter 7.